Hospice care is now available in hospitals and long-term care settings such as nursing homes. Many persons live in nursing homes long before they have a terminal diagnosis. For those persons, the nursing home has become their home. Others are moving into nursing homes because their terminal condition requires 24-hour skilled nursing care, so they are new to institutional life. The patient's length of time in the nursing home makes a difference in their overall attitude and, of course, their adjustment to the terminal diagnosis. Nursing homes are just what their name implies. They are home for the people who live there. However, no one really wants to live in a nursing home. No one wants to give up their physical home, the majority of their possessions, or their independence. It's not easy to accept living in an institutional setting. Some people adjust fairly quickly to their new environment, while others do not. Some simply never adjust. Let's consider some of the adjustments and lifestyle changes that may take place for persons moving into the nursing home setting. Many senior adults have lived independently until the time they entered the nursing home. Others may have already made one or two transitions from an assisted living or senior adult complex. Either way, there are still many adjustments to be made in the nursing home setting. People move into nursing homes because they cannot take care of their physical needs. Activities of daily living is one way we measure and document what a person can and cannot do for themselves. Can they physically bend down and put on their shoes? Can they get themselves to and from the toilet? Can they transfer themselves from a chair to the bed? Each person's abilities and needs are different. Some need what is called total care, while others need only moderate care. Incontinence is often the primary reason persons need nursing home care. Others need care after strokes or as the result of diseases such as diabetes, Parkinson's disease, or Alzheimer's. Some simply grow frail with age and require full-time care. Hospice patients may have been living in the nursing home prior to their admission into hospice. Others may become a nursing home resident as a result of the additional care required due to their terminal diagnosis. Whether they are new to the nursing home or have had time to settle in makes a difference in their overall attitude and emotional state. In addition to the physical needs that lead to nursing home care, there are emotional, spiritual, and social needs that develop with their entry into a nursing facility. Depression is high among nursing home residents. Older adults have lived through wars, depressions, and all sorts of changes, but for many, entry into a nursing home is the last place they'd like to be. It means they are no longer independent. They are no longer mobile. They have little input into when and what they eat, when they get up or go to bed. They may have lived alone in a home for years, or with a spouse of 60 or more years, and now they're expected to live in a small space, often with a roommate. Their life of independence makes a huge shift when they enter a nursing home. No matter how nice the home or how well qualified and competent the staff members, this traumatic, life-changing event is difficult for most adults. We've already said that some persons make the transition easier, and of course the staff and home itself makes a difference in how easily transitions are made. It's easier to adjust when homes offer residents as many choices as possible and allow them to feel some sense of control. Adjustment is also easier in those homes with less staff turnover and compassionate staff members who get to know the residents as real people. Some nursing homes are better than others at helping residents feel that life does go on and that they continue to have worth and value. New friendships can be made. Spiritual growth can occur. People can try things and learn things they've never done before. Some residents will flourish in the nursing home setting. After living alone for years, they may enjoy the close proximity of others, the activities, and social events. Others will wilt, grieving for what was. A terminal diagnosis can be difficult wherever someone lives. Life in a nursing home adds an additional dimension in trying to help the hospice patient find peace during the last chapter of life. As a volunteer, it will be helpful if you know how long your patient has lived in the nursing home and the lifestyle they have chosen in the home. Do they participate in scheduled activities? Do they have friends? Do they eat at a certain time? Trying to understand whether they have made a positive adjustment to nursing home life, whether they are still new, or whether they are angry or sad about where they live, will help you understand this added dimension of tender, loving care needed. Once a nursing home resident enters hospice care, the hospice team designs the plan of care and works with the nursing home staff to implement the care. Nursing home staff members are primarily trained to help people live, to get them involved, to help them feel a part of the community. It can be very difficult for them to accept a terminal diagnosis, especially for their favorites or persons who have brought joy and excitement into the home. The hospice staff can help nursing home staff transition into palliative care and support for the patient who is dying. Nursing home staff members continue to provide care for their patients under the direction of hospice, helping them keep patients as free of pain as possible. Together, the patient gets the best of both worlds. Staff they know and trust, working with new hospice faces who are specially trained to meet their needs as a terminal patient. As you begin to visit someone in a nursing home setting, there are ways to make your visits more productive and satisfying. Pick up an activity calendar and meal schedule so you'll know what's going on in the home. You may find your patient is still able to participate and enjoys certain types of activities. If he or she enjoys music programs, then check out the calendar to determine when they will be busy. If they like bingo, then don't plan a visit during bingo time. However, there are always exceptions. You may want to plan your visit so that part of your time is spent together participating in some type of activity. Sharing together might be a way to get to know your patient. This could open up new avenues for conversation, laughter, and good times. If they are new to the home, then this might help them get out of their room. Having a friend with you in new situations is always a good feeling. As you visit in the nursing home, pay attention to the staff. Greet them and let them know who you are and the resident you are visiting. Nursing home staff members do an amazing job caring for their residents. It is an extremely difficult occupation. They deal with residents who are not happy about being there, who need all levels of care, including basic toileting and bathing. Staff members deal with family who feel guilty for abandoning their loved one to the home, and often they become the brunt of their frustrations. Staff work under very difficult situations, trying to maintain the dignity of the resident while providing the most basic care. They experience losses of those residents they care about through death on a regular basis, but they cannot stop to grieve because there is always someone needing their attention. On top of all this, Nursing homes do not pay well when compared with other health care facilities. Most nursing home staff members stay because they love the residents and feel they are making a difference in their lives. As you visit in the home, try to let the nursing home staff members know you appreciate all that they do. Hospice provides the same care in the nursing home as in the home setting. The major difference is that the nursing home staff members serve as the primary caregiver rather than a spouse or family member. However, even though the family is not providing the day-to-day care, the family continues to oversee the care and to be served by hospice just as they would if the patient resided in a private home. Let's move on now to what is expected of you, the volunteer, within the nursing home setting. Besides getting to know the nursing home staff and familiarity with the patient's schedule, the expectations are the same as if the patient were in his or her own home. You are there as a friend, a supporter, a companion, a part of their network or community. In the nursing home, that can mean being a bridge to others, staff and residents, when the patient is new to the home. Your roles in regard to administering medications and transferring the patient are the same whether they live in a nursing home or their own home. Do not give medications and do not attempt to lift or move the patient. Medications are to be given by licensed nurses who are authorized to do so. Nursing staff and some other nursing home staff members are trained in how to safely lift and transfer a patient from one place to another. What if the patient just wants to move from their wheelchair to their easy chair? It seems easy enough, but don't do it. You don't know the mechanics involved, and you don't know how frail the patient might be. It's hard to wait, but you must push the call button or ask a staff member to assist the patient. If you proceed to assist the patient yourself, you could easily cause harm to both the patient and yourself. Don't do it. You are authorized to push a wheelchair once the patient is safely seated. The guidelines presented in the segment on communication are the same wherever you are visiting. There are usually numerous places to visit within the nursing home setting besides the resident's room. If he or she is mobile, look for quiet places without a lot of distractions, and always be mindful of roommates if you are visiting in the patient's room. The guidelines regarding spiritual needs are also the same wherever a patient lives. Just keep in mind that the patient's adjustment or lack of adjustment to nursing home life can impact his or her spirit. And most importantly, remember that the patient's nursing home room is their home. You would not walk into someone's home unannounced. It's the same in the nursing home. Always knock, even if the door is ajar. Then listen for a response. If none, knock again. If there is still no response, announce yourself and quietly peek in. The patient may have the TV on. He or she may be hard of hearing, or they may be asleep in their chair or bed. Always give them an opportunity to respond to a knock. If a staff member happens to be giving some type of care, they will answer and ask you to wait until they are finished. What if you find that your patient is asleep in his or her chair or lying down in the bed? If sitting up in a chair, most nursing home residents are dozing and would be greatly disappointed if you came and they missed seeing you. Ask them their preference. Would you like me to waken you if I come to see you and you're dozing in your chair? If they are sleeping in their bed, they may be in a deep sleep. Inquire ahead of time what you should do. They may or may not wish to be awakened. They may be at the point where they sleep most of the time, and your gift to them will be just sitting with them, offering your quiet presence, perhaps reading aloud, or playing music for them while they sleep.
This is a very good point because the staff will also tell you whether or not it's appropriate to wake up the individual that you're visiting. Like, they'll give you a heads up, like, oh, they had a really bad night. Please don't, wake them up if that's the case. So it's always best because most people are just closing their eyes out of boredom. If something's not like stimulating them, but the staff will let you know either way. Or they'll say, oh, go in, they love visitors.
If your patient is said to be awake and alert daily, but you find him or her to be sleeping when you come to visit, you might ask the nursing home staff when he or she would be most likely to be awake. Since these staff members are there on a day-to-day basis, they would have a good idea of the patient's normal routine and when they would most likely appreciate a visit. Remember, too, that many rooms are double occupancy. Be sensitive to the roommate. There will be times when you'll want to pull the curtain between the two living spaces. There may be other times when you want to include the roommate in your visit. Be aware and in tune with your patient's needs and the feelings of the roommate. Many nursing home residents don't get enough outside visitors and thrive on attention. Nursing homes are often the best place to be for patients who need full-time nursing care. However, it can be difficult for family members to give up day-to-day control when placing their loved one in a facility. They may feel guilty and feel they have abandoned or let their loved one down. They may also feel they must be present most of the day, every day. If you sense families dealing with these issues, reassure them they are still the family caregiver. They are still part of the care team and are overseeing the care provided by the nursing home and hospice staff members. They are making sure their loved one is getting the care they need, that they are clean, that they are comfortable, that they are as free of pain as possible. Remind them they are keeping an eye out to ensure that their loved one is getting well-balanced and appropriate nutrition. Part of your role as a volunteer is to help the family feel good about their decision to let professionals provide the day-to-day care their family member needs. No one wants to live in a nursing home, but just think about the services they provide. With persons living longer, there comes a time for many when they cannot meet their own basic needs. Most of these senior adults do not have family members who can provide the level of care they require on a 24-hour-a-day basis. Is it better for someone to lie in bed alone all day, hungry and wet with their own body fluids, waiting for a family member to come home from work? There are no easy solutions when elderly persons require care. But for a mobile society with record numbers of aging adults, nursing homes can offer safety and companionship in addition to providing the physical care and nutrition needed. Death can be a daily occurrence in large nursing homes, but so too is living. For those residents that are able and willing, their life in a nursing home can be a growing experience. Certainly not the same as any other time in life, but a time when simple joys as well as times to reflect and ponder may bring newfound depth and growth into one's earthly experience. If your patient resides in a nursing home, We hope you too will experience and sense the value of these facilities. Negative publicity is common, and incidents of elder abuse do occasionally occur. But for the most part, nursing homes provide a good service and help our society keep frail senior adults safe. Congratulations, you have now completed this segment on hospice and nursing homes. Please take some time to reflect upon the information shared, then locate and fill.
There we go. All right. So we don't have Amy, our reader, but we still got to do the quiz, which is on page 10. So would somebody like to take over?
I'll read.
Thanks, Michelle.
When visiting a nursing home, you should sign in, introduce yourself to the staff, and introduce yourself to the resident. True or false? True. The calendar of activities at a nursing home is a good resource for volunteer visits. Volunteers can also gain information about a person's interests from the recreation staff. True or false? True. Volunteers should interrupt personal care as residents do not need privacy. True or false? False. Good communication with staff at a nursing home helps ensure the best care for the resident. True. At the end of every visit, walk away without talking to anyone. False.
All right. So, one thing it's really helpful for the nursing home staff, to know who you are. Just as a heads up, it is going to be a monologue on your part, as the staff are usually in the middle of charting or counting medications or doing something, that requires their attention. So, go to the resident's nursing station, let them know that you're a volunteer and you're going to visit. And then if anyone comes in the room, again, just introduce yourself. They're going to assume that you are a home health aide or a family member. And in both of those cases, you would be able to help out with personal care. So you just have to let them know that you're a volunteer. And I've never heard about like a volunteer being, anyone being unkind when somebody has said that they're a volunteer. Like, for the most part, it makes everybody excited that y'all exist, and everyone appreciates that one-on-one attention for their resident, because like Pat said, they become the primary caregivers. They want the best for that person, and they also want the person to be safe. So if you can't help, like, for example, which you cannot put a spoon to somebody's mouth, like, that is a no. And the nursing home staff understand. You say, I'm not trained, I haven't been oriented. Rachel?
So just to check on the, obviously we can't do the medication, but can we pass them a cup of water or anything, or is that also a no-no? I just want to be totally clear.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if something is out of reach on the table, it's kind of like you can certainly bring it closer. You can't hold it and lift it to somebody's mouth. So it's like, that's kind of the line. Like, if the meal comes and you just need to provide like that hospitality of maybe like opening up the milk and putting it in the coffee or something like that, that's A-okay. It's the like physical lifting of food. That's the no.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that, like, so, So there are two things that are just going to be the frustration. So because you can't help with food, it makes sense not to visit at noon. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there frustrated that, like you could be doing something, but you also can't. So the easiest times to visit in a nursing home is usually like 10 or 11, or then in the afternoon. So you can, like Pat said, you can always check to see when that person's awake. Like, for example, one of our social workers has been declined every single one of her visits, and she asked how the volunteer was doing. The volunteer is doing great. She's having great visits with the patient because she's going at like 3:00. The social worker is always going early in the day, like 9:30. And just that difference, the social worker tried it out going in the afternoon this week and had a better visit. So, of course, any day can be a hit or miss, but there are those patterns that some people have where they might be more alert. The other thing that's frustrating that you're not going to be able to help out with is the personal care. It's the going to the bathroom. Because when somebody in a nursing home says that they have to go to the bathroom, they had to go to the bathroom 15 minutes ago. And it's going to take another 15 minutes to get somebody in the room. So you just want to advocate for your individual, let the staff know, like, Mrs. Jones needs to go to the bathroom. And then if nobody's there in 15 minutes, let the staff know again. Or a good way to get somebody's attention, if you're finding it difficult, is to push the call bell. Because that gets... most facilities that gets tracked, and it's also an annoying noise for staff. So they're going to, it's kind of like the universal someone needs attention at a nursing facility sign. So they might be a little bit more attentive if you do that. And it's good just to, again, like, look at the clock and reassure your patient, like, well, it's only been 5 minutes since we asked for help. It'll probably take a few more minutes to get somebody, that is the common frustration. And one thing just of note, you want to also kind of look at the big picture when you're going into any situation. So, an example, when a volunteer was concerned, she went to visit her patient who's always up and dressed in her wheelchair. And the person was still in bed and in their, like, Johnny coat. And so when she arrived, kind of the red flags went off, and she was worried that there had been, that they hadn't paid attention to her lady yet. But she introduced herself to the resident, as she always does. She talked to the staff. The staff said, "Oh, okay, I'm not sure if she's going to be receptive to you." She went into the room, and the lady was like, "Nope, I need to, her thing was like waiting at the bus. I need to wait at the bus. I cannot, be visited right now." So it was like the full picture. The resident was clean. She had been taken care of. She was just not having a good day. So you kind of just want to see that big picture too, because it might just be as simple as, today's a day where the morning is going to be spent in bed because she's refusing care and the staff is honoring her wishes. Anyway, Do you guys have any questions about visiting in a nursing home? Yeah.
Not so much a question, but just like the whole thing that Peggy mentioned about not moving people. That is just like super, super important because way back when I first started working with seniors, like I saw someone was about to fall and it's kind of instinctive. It's so obviously you don't want them to fall. So I went to grab them and support them, and I was able to do it because this was a few years ago. I was stronger than I am now, and I'm still reasonably strong, but still not that I would want them to fall and hurt themselves, but they might look frail. But trust me, if they're falling, they are a dead weight. I was shocked how heavy this guy was. And he was like a skinny little person, and old. So, yeah, the risk to your own personal injury is huge if you...
Yeah, and also a risk to that patient to get injured, too, because that is where the most injuries occur, is when a patient is being transferred. So we always want to just be mindful to try and do that safe. And then the other thing, just with liquid and with food, a lot of people are on specialty diets. A lot of people are having difficulty swallowing. And so that would be a mistake that I made when I first started visiting somebody. I gave somebody at their home something to drink, and that person coughed for what felt like 24 hours, but I'm sure was 3 minutes. It scared the crap out of me. It scared me so much. And it was like, and this is why I'm not supposed to give anyone anything to drink. Like, duh, So that was a mistake that I made. So don't do that either, because it will give you a heart attack.
Yeah, but I can see why you would want to, particularly if their person is out and they want a drink of water. It's like, But I guess if you can pass them the cup and they can do it themselves, that's okay. But you can't.
Yeah,
so that's
the thing. Like I had gotten them a drink, so I had stepped over that boundary, and I mean I think I got their cup from the fridge, but if somebody's okay to have like water or a snack during your visit, just have that caregiver set it up before you leave. Or, sometimes it might be as simple as just doing like a microwave dinner if directed. We had one of our volunteers that would, was directed to just kind of provide that hospitality of heating up the food, but then that individual could eat their food. So, it's a difference. It always has to be cleared by the caregiver, and cleared by the caregiver, and then don't bring like a spoon or a cup to somebody's mouth.
Okay, thank you. No, that's really helpful, and I'm very clear.
So we have 2 more presentations tonight. We're going at a good pace, and the next we have talked about how difficult it can be for families, and this is just like a presentation on families with Pat. All right, let me share.
Hello and welcome back to the Hospice Volunteer Training Series. This segment covers the topic of family. You've already learned that hospice considers the family to be the unit of care. So it's easy to see why we need to spend some time talking about family and family relationships. Families are living, growing organisms, never stagnant, constantly changing. Families are always in transition. There are numerous definitions of family, but for our purposes, we'll think of the family as a group of people connected in some way. When we think of families, we often think of nuclear families, mother, father, and children. But in years past, the extended family was the most common unit of reference. Families were made up of parents, children, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, most often living geographically close to one another. As our society has grown more mobile, the number of families living in close proximity has declined. At the same time, our definition of family has broadened beyond the traditional extended blood and marriage family system. We are no longer tied to the concept that it takes a mother, father, and birth child to make a family. Some couples choose not to have children. They are a family of two. Children come into families through adoption as well as birth. We recognize that a single parent, whether never married, divorced, or widowed, and a child are a family. Single adults are now able to adopt children in order to create a family unit. There are blended families, when parents merge two families into one. There are grandparents raising grandchildren. There are homosexual couples adopting and raising children. Families come in all shapes, sizes, ages, and colors. Nuclear family units living around the world and far from their blood relatives often develop relationships with other non-related families who help fill the gap for missing grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles. Thus, a family bond may emerge out of relationships that meet the needs of the persons involved and continue as long as the situation and circumstances warrant. While my husband, young son, and I lived in California, far from any blood relatives, we developed friendships with two other families from my husband's company. They, too, were far from their blood relatives, and we developed a family-like bond, sharing holidays and special events during our years in the same community. Families are primary influencers in our lives. They can be both blessing and curse. They nurture, they abuse, they protect, and they harm. They love, and they hate. They speak words of love and yet behave in ways that crush and break the spirit. Families are never perfect organisms. People come from genetic pools that determine much of who they are. And yet, the power of the family to bless or curse its members also plays a primary role in who we are and how we live. Our family of origin influences how we see ourselves, how we react to the circumstances of life, and how we make choices that determine the path of our life journey. Families, as living organisms, are made up of systems. Just like the body has a circulatory system, digestive system, and nervous system, the family too has its own unique system for dealing with life. Hospice strives to serve patients and their families. Each family is unique. Each family has patterns of communication, styles, boundaries, and systems in place. As a volunteer, it's important to understand that these systems, or the family's patterns of dealing with one another and with what life throws at them, are well established. You cannot change how the family system works. The patient's family may be very different than yours. They may react and respond to one another to outsiders and to complex situations very differently than yours would. Accept it. Do not judge or belittle how the patient's family system works. Do not attempt to change these family patterns and systems. Your role is to support the family, even if you do not agree or understand their systems. Help them find their inner strengths and simply care. If family patterns are disruptive to the dying family member's quality of life, hospice staff will do what they can to make sure the patient is as free of these extra stressors as possible. Because no family is ever perfect, the presence of a terminal diagnosis to one of its members can be devastating to the family system. Since there is no such thing as the perfect father knows best family, we cannot begin to predict how a family will respond, interact, or adapt to the upcoming death of a loved one. Families are living, growing systems. Just like individuals, the family unit has a life cycle and stages of development. Each stage has its own unique attributes and opportunities for joy and sorrow. Births and adoptions of children are generally happy times. But these same times can also be extremely stressful, as the family must learn new patterns of living and adapt to having another person in the household. Sending a child to kindergarten can be both liberating and sad for the parent as the child steps out into the bigger world. The empty nest is also a time of ups and downs. Parents experience a new freedom, but at the same time, a sense of loss. The aging process brings new challenges to adults. The sandwich generation finds challenges at both ends of the family spectrum, caring for children while at the same time caring for elderly parents. Then, in the midst of all these developmental phases, life goes on. Credit cards max out. Mortgages are due. The air conditioner breaks down. College tuition mounts up. Diseases appear. Children get into trouble. Alcoholism, gambling, or other addictions come into the picture. Broken bones occur. These stresses and challenges of daily life are part of the living, changing experience of the family. The impending death of a family member is one of the highest stressors a family can experience. Place this on top of the teetering family life experience, and you often find family members ready to break down. Death is almost always difficult. It's even more difficult if the family is already in the midst of change or situations that are particularly challenging. The level of stress is also dependent upon who in the family system is dying. The impending loss of a child can rip a family apart. An elderly woman losing a husband of 60 years can be heartbroken. But besides the emotional stress, the husband may have handled all their bills and paperwork up until his final illness. The soon-to-be widow may not know how to pay the bills or even how to write a check. The loss of an elderly man's wife can be equally devastating. Besides losing his lifelong companion, the soon-to-be widower may not know how to boil water, do laundry, or take care of the house. He and his wife came from a time when the wife took care of those household duties. The situations surrounding death are never the same. Each disrupts the family system in one way or another. Consider these different scenarios. The loss of a husband for a young mother with small children. The loss of an elderly parent. Loss of a loved one after a long illness. Loss of a loved one after a tragic accident. loss of a young man or woman in the prime of life. Each situation impacts the family system, causing the family to anticipate the changes that will come with the impending loss of a family member. No one can quantitatively measure the amount of pain or how the death will impact the family system. The point here is to understand that death affects each family differently. There are so many variables that we can never predict or know what to expect. The key to caring for the family is compassion and understanding. Let's go a little further in our family exploration by considering how family members interact with one another. Some families keep their distance. They handle their own affairs and do not routinely confide in one another. Other families can't make a decision until they have discussed the situation with most of their closest relatives. They talk back and forth constantly, and everyone knows everybody else's business. Of course, these are two extremes, and most families are somewhere in the middle. When a family unit is extremely dependent upon one another, they may find it nearly impossible to separate themselves from the loved one who is dying. They cannot imagine functioning without the input of the one who is dying. On the other hand, when a family unit keeps its distance emotionally from each other, it may appear that they don't care about one another. Neither extreme is the appropriate or inappropriate way for a family to be, and families shift along the continuum depending upon their stage in life. Awareness of these patterns is what's important for you as the volunteer. Another characteristic that is helpful to understand is how families communicate and relate to persons outside their family, including hospice team members. A family system that is very private encourages family members to keep what happens within the family to themselves. They may develop strict guidelines for interacting with persons outside the family system. This type of family system tends to keep strong boundaries between the family and outsiders. Think about what this might mean for you as a volunteer. You may not get a warm, fuzzy welcome. You may find it difficult to visit or talk in depth with the patient or family members. The family may not want to talk about the impending death or how they are handling things. You may feel like an outsider rather than part of a team. In these situations, have patience. These patterns of behavior have nothing to do with you as a person or as a hospice volunteer. Your presence and diligence may bring more strength and goodwill to the family than you will ever know. However, they may never really express their appreciation. In contrast, a family system that is open to outsiders usually encourages family members to develop outside relationships, including professional support when needed. They generally communicate clearly and are willing to talk about what's going on within the family. An open family will probably welcome you into their circle. They will be more likely to speak openly about what's going on and how they are coping. Again, these examples are extremes. Most families will be somewhere in the middle. Just be aware of these patterns and do not take matters personally. Do not judge or try to change these patterns. Do the best you can to provide open, honest, compassionate care. That's all we ask. Another interesting phenomenon is how a family may divide up among its members. Pairs, triangles, and groups may emerge as family members deal with issues and situations. The impending death of a family member may result in other family members dividing up based on any number of issues or concerns. For example, they may disagree on how and where their loved one should receive treatment, care, medications, finances, the will, or changing roles. As you interact with family members, you'll begin to see who seems to support whom, recognizing some of the subgroups that form. The larger the family, the more subgroups there can be. We've mentioned how these varying systems and patterns of behavior may impact you and your relationship with the family. Let's take a closer look now at how the impending death of a loved one may affect the family system. Depending upon the family member who is dying, the remainder of the family has to assume that person's roles. The family system has to reinvent itself, often with great difficulty. If the dying member was a stay-at-home mother, who will now care for the children? If a toddler is dying, who will bring that joy of childhood? If grandpa is dying and was taking care of his wife with Alzheimer's, who now will take on that responsibility? Through all of this, family members may grow closer, or the stress may drive them apart. It's never an easy time in the life of a family. And finally, let's talk about the preferred level of physical contact for families or individuals. On a scale of between 1 and 10, you'll come across all levels. Some people need a lot of physical contact. Others will not tolerate it. And still others are somewhere in between. At a summer family campfire, we were led in a song that goes something like this. Take a friend's hand, slap a friend's back, hug a friend's neck. The song seemed innocent enough, but one very athletic 30-something young father stomped out. I later learned that he served in a very elite group of the military. He could not and would not tolerate a stranger touching him. In another example, a middle-aged woman would get physically nauseated every time an older man at her church gave her a hug. Although his actions were innocent, they triggered memories of being sexually molested by her grandfather when she was a young girl. Individuals often follow the physical contact patterns of their family, but there are no hard and fast rules here. Pay attention to the signals. Some patients need a hug every time you visit. Others prefer a handshake or touch on the arm. Still others do not want any type of touch. You may want to give your patient a hug, but find that they do not respond positively to this action. Or the opposite may occur. You may not be comfortable giving hugs, but find out that your patient thrives on them. Do your best to stay true to yourself, but remember that you are there to meet the needs of your patient as best you can. As always, there are no right or wrong ways to be when it comes to physical contact. Most terminally ill patients need some physical contact. Your role is to pay attention and learn to hear the often unspoken words and body language that say, "Keep your distance," or "I need a hug." Let's take a few moments now to review the key points of this segment. First of all, remember that families are the unit of care for hospice services. The patient cannot be separated from his or her family. He or she is part of a family system and has played a role within that family system. The terminal diagnosis of a family member changes the patterns and roles of the family. It can be a very difficult time in the life of the family as they attempt to reorganize and readjust their family's roles. Families behave in unique ways. Some are very close to their own members and prefer to keep their family's issues to themselves. Other families are more open and encourage outside relationships. Sometimes family members divide up and form subgroups as they debate and discuss important family matters. As you develop relationships with hospice patients and their families, you will begin to see the uniqueness of each family. It's important to remember that no family is perfect and that you may or may not be comfortable with certain families for any number of reasons. Please do not hesitate to discuss any discomfort with your supervisor. Not every volunteer will be comfortable with every family system. Sometimes it is best to back off and allow another volunteer to step in if you feel you cannot comfortably provide the support the patient and family needs. This is perfectly acceptable and nothing to be embarrassed about. That's why we have a pool of volunteers with different interests, different comfort zones, and different backgrounds. The hospice system of care is unique in that it does address the needs of the family as well as the patient. While the patient's quality of life is our highest priority, it is intricately interwoven within the life of the family and cannot be isolated. The hospice team is there to support the patient and family, whatever their patterns, beliefs, needs, or family systems. Thank you for wanting to be part of the team. Each
I cut out over thank you.
Unique set of gifts.
All right. But thank you. Let's see. So in the COVID world now, we really don't want you hugging the patient. So we want you to keep more distance than you would have in the past. And never hug somebody if you feel uncomfortable anyway. That's not like a need that you have to navigate for your patient, like she said. So I'm just rebuting a couple of things. But we have our post-test for family systems. Michelle, you want to go?
Sure. True or false, terminal illness will bring out whatever health or ill health is established in the family system.
Yeah, so it just like brings everything that's wrong with the family to the surface, right? It's a stressful situation.
True or false, each family that we meet has a system of communicating that has been established over many years. True. True or false, hospice volunteers should judge families and belittle family members. False.
Yeah. So you don't want to engage if someone's trying to get you to kind of agree with them about something that the other family member, for example, is not doing. Right now, one of our nurses was just sharing that one of our patients has 3 daughters. They all feel like they are doing the most, and they all feel like the other 2 is doing nothing.
True or false? Any change in one family member affects all family members the same.
False.
False. True or false? When a family member cries, a volunteer's first job is to get them to stop.
False.
False.
Yeah. So we just want the point is to say, like, you know, who knows what we're going to come across. There are so many differences in families. There are so many differences in who you're going to visit because we're just, you know, visiting people. And just to try to, you know, hold people in a positive regard, and just tell us any concerns that you might have. And if a situation makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, do not go back. We can either it would be appropriate to just discharge volunteers, depending on what the circumstances, or we'll just have a different volunteer visit. So there is the reflective questions on all of the pages, and if you could do the ethics, her ethics training isn't great. I mean, you'd think that it would be like real juicy because it's hospice, but it doesn't say much. So we're going to skip that video. But I would like you to answer on page 14. Is it ethical to withhold medical information from an individual receiving medical care? Describe circumstances where withholding medical information might be ethical and what circumstances it might be unethical. So we kind of just come across that situation a lot where people, where somebody might be mentally compromised and unable to make their decisions. So we might have somebody else be making the medical decisions for them. And then also, you know, sometimes, like as a volunteer, it's always best just to say that you are a volunteer with Hartford Healthcare. A lot of times we get asked by the children of our patients, is 100% of the time who it comes from, but they don't want us to use the word hospice. So that is, you know, because it kind of brings that reality and, you know, emotions to the surface. Like I know for myself, after being in hospice for 8 years, I would want it for myself, and I would not want people to say it. So, like, I can relate at least on, like, a personal choice of that. But we are all set for the night, and the last class will go over dementia, and then what, like, the nuts and bolts of what to do as a volunteer as far as, like, your visit notes and stuff. Rachel?
So does it happen often that you reassign or that someone doesn't feel that they are a match or that you have to withdraw altogether? Does that, I wouldn't have thought, no?
No, it's usually, let's see. Sometimes it's kind of odd. Well, the most common reason why a volunteer doesn't go anymore is because that person doesn't like people as like the baseline like personality for their entire life. Like they like to be alone, they like to be left alone, and sometimes volunteers get referred when everybody is kind of throwing their hands up and doesn't know what, like, how can we help this person? And they're like, try a volunteer. And so in that case, I will let you know, well, they've rejected everyone else, but they would like for a volunteer to visit. Would you like that challenge or would you like to pass on it? And some people, you know, kind of enjoy seeing if they can connect with the curmudgeon, or, you know, at least like think it's worthwhile to go. And then some people would just
it would be so one of my sons and one of my brothers, but I don't want anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, even one of my best volunteers he's always like, I don't understand why people allow me to visit. He's like, when I am not feeling well, I don't want anyone around me. So, you know, it's just everyone's unique personality. And usually what happens, the most common reason why a volunteer gets like discharge is the visit never happens to begin with. So when saying the services, the family might say, sure, we'll try out whatever. But then also, as often when people go on to hospice care, their family members might kind of like step up the visits that they have. So they might have their daughter flying in for a month, and they might just have more people around them, and so they decline the volunteer. So that's really the most common, is it just never gets scheduled even though it was referred.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
And again, whatever your schedule is totally fine as long as we know it, so we can document it accurately. And especially, I mean, with COVID, with families being exposed, with the volunteers being exposed, I'm changing the frequency every month. Like, it's like 4 visits one month, 1 visit the next month. It just is. And it's all fine as long as I document it. All right. So if you have any, just kind of general questions, think about it for Thursday's our last class. These trainings, at least for me, always fly by, even though there's so many nights and, kind of like a long chunk of time. There's just so much information, right? And then, of course, we'll have ongoing education. So if you feel like there's a gap that you want more explanation on, please let us know, and then we'll try to do, a monthly education on that subject. All right, guys. Well, have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Reach out if you have any questions.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.